Guys, it's Teresa here of Larkin Design. Welcome to my layout, sharing this traditional layout, a 12 by 12 mixed media layout that I'm doing today. I'm going to be using my Felicity Jane summer kit. It's the kit that went out in June of 2017. And I'm also using this stencil from Deco Art. And so I was inspired by the floral pattern paper that was in the Felicity Jane kit. So I'm going to, but rather than use that paper just yet, I'm going to use it as a jumping off point. And right now I'm mixing some colors that sort of closely resemble the colors in this pattern paper. I had a pink and a red that I felt were kind of okay close, and I did not have a green that was at all close to the green that's in this floral. So I'm just going to mix up my own shade here. And I'm going to use this stencil. I'm just testing out my color here to see sort of how it matches or how it compares, and it's close. It doesn't have to be an exact match. Like I said, I'm not going to use that floral paper just yet. I'm not going to use it on this layout, but I am going to use this stencil to create a floral embellishment on my layout. And yes, I'm going to paint this with a paintbrush, and I'm sort of going in here, not very detailed, not exact. Of course, if you want a stencil to be exact, you need to use a sponge or a stipple brush and press into it rather than painting it, right? Because some of the paint is going to get under your stencil if you use it like this. And that's sort of my goal. I don't want the precise stencil. I want sort of a loose interpretation of this stencil. And because I do want to paint a little on my layout today, and I do want to have some fun. You know, sometimes I just want to work with my brush, and I just want to do this. For me, is a stress-free way to get a design on the paper without having to feel like I have to draw it. I didn't have to draw these flowers. They're there already, and these leaves, they're there already, and I can just use that stencil as a jumping off point for my own painting. So that's sort of my thought process here. It's just another way to use the stencils. You can also, of course, trace these and then paint inside your lines if you want to do it that way. There's several different ways you can use stencils. You can, of course, mist. You can use your modeling paste and then run your colors over it. That's one of my other favorite ways to use stencils. So this was today, and I'm going to make sure that my paint is good and dry here for this layer, and then I'm going to darken this green a little bit to create a little bit of a shadow on each of these leaves. And so what I'm going to do with this shade of green is I'm going to take a really fine little tiny brush and just draw in some details or paint in some details here on these leaves. And again, just to add a little visual interest, and just to feel the paintbrush, just to do something with moving paint around the page is quite therapeutic, actually. And I also, you may notice, because like I said, some of that paint will get underneath the stencil when you use a stencil that way. And so that becomes opportunities to go back with a darker color and widen that leaf or that stem a little bit. And then I'm gonna do a few little splatters over the page just to carry that color across a little bit. And then once I have my green done, then I'm gonna go back and do the same with the flowers. So I'm going to make sure that everything is dry in between all of those coats of paint. I also want to clean that paint off of the stencil itself. I'm just using a baby wipe for that. And I'm not really making it perfectly clean. I'll do that after I'm done with the layout. I'll go and wash it with warm soapy water. But for now, a baby wipe works well. I'm going to just touch it a little bit more with the heat gun just to make sure that that green is dry before I set the stencil back down. And it's still a little bit wet, so I grabbed a paper towel and dried it that way. Now I'm going to set the stencil back down the way it was. And so you can see the parts of the stencil that are still left to be filled in here. So I'm switching to the Heidi Swap Shine here. You have to shake these up really good. They do have a tendency to bleed just a little bit, and that's okay. So shake it up really good, and then it should be fine. And I'm just going to fill in the flowers here with those pinks. I'm choosing the lighter shade. Always do the lighter shade first, and then you can darken that with your second shade. And I chose this stencil. I wanted mostly a leaf pattern with just a few florals. So I think that was a success. And on this round, I'm just filling in those flowers. There's still some dots that I'll go back later and fill in as well. Of course, make sure that it's dry. That's the important step to keep these colors from muddying up. Make sure that it's dry in between all of your stages. And so then once that is dry, I'm just gonna take this darker red, this darker pink, and add some details to each of these flowers. And there's no real science to this. I'm really thinking about how the light would hit each flower, and in some ways I'm just kind of outlining it a little bit. I'm not really thinking hard about it. And then I'm referencing back to the stencil here to define these, because they do sort of lose some of their definition. And then I'm going to splatter a few more paint colors, or just a few more paint splatters around the page here, and also over top of the flowers. And then notice I go back and I do darken some of those splatters. There's also some little dots in the stencil itself. I did not stencil those per se. I'm just going to freehand. And a few more splatters on the top. There. And then those splatters were really wet, so I just put a paper towel down to draw up some of the moisture from that. And now I'm just going back with this stencil to see if I have everything filled in. I don't. There's just a few more of those little dots, and I wanted to add those with the turquoise this time. So I'm just using that stencil again just to note where those little dots are, and then freehand those. It's not very complicated, you guys. Not a lot of thought or stressing out over whether it's perfect or anything like that. Just putting down paint for the purpose of putting down paint, and just enjoying the process. And a couple of more splatters with the turquoise here. And once I dry it, then, or heat gun it, then we'll be ready to start the embellishing portion. I think also when you blot the Heidi Swap Shine paints with the paper towel, it helps them not get so greasy. And so now I'm going to clean all that off, and then we'll start embellishing. So let me tell you a little bit about my photo here. This was taken a couple of weeks ago when we were eating dinner outside in our backyard, and I was just looking around the table and just paying attention to what I saw there. Here we are, it's the beginning of summer, and so we're just starting to be able to eat dinner in our backyard and enjoy the outdoors together a little bit and relax. And I've been paying attention. Ali Edwards released the Lens Story Kit a couple of weeks ago, and I've been watching some of the layouts that have been coming from that. I didn't get that story kit myself, but it is a great journaling prompt and a great photography prompt. And so I took a panoramic photo with my iPhone and just sweeping around the table of just what I'm seeing just that evening here. And then when the Felicity Jane summer kit came in, it was perfect to tie together this idea of photographing what I see, and what I see is our family enjoying the summer. And so that's sort of how this design concept came together. And I knew I wanted to print out the photo at a 12-inch width, and whatever height that came to, I don't remember. But it is just printed at a 12-inch width on a 13 by 19 sheet of matte photo paper, and then trimmed out. And then, of course, my go-to for cutting pattern paper that I don't want to cut up is just to cut strips. And then I'm tucking those strips underneath the photo itself. I am going above the floral design here, and then my journaling and my title will go on the lower right hand side of the layout. And so I'm just gonna adhere all these little strips. I've chosen some of the black and whites because I'm totally digging black and white patterns right now with pops of color. And so I chose several of the black and white patterns, a couple of the solids, and then some of the patterns. That wood grain, love it. That sunburst, love it. It's awesome. So just keeping with those corals and pinks and turquoises here. And they're just different heights, different widths. Again, not really thinking it through very complicated, But what I am doing here is just creating a little home base for some stickers or stamps or whatever embellishments that I decide to add here, just for a little bit of visual interest. And notice, of course, this black and white stripe. I'm also going to repeat it at the bottom to sort of ground this layout. I forgot that I hadn't trimmed off the marketing strip from my cardstock yet. And then the photo too was just a little bit wider than the cardstock. So I trimmed that up and got that ready to slide right into my page protector once it's done. And so that's pretty much the basis of the layout. There's where I'm putting that black and white there. And that leads your eye down to that spot in the layout, right? You can see that. So these are the stamps from the summer kit. Love, love, love these. Great fonts, great little sentiments. There's a couple of little sentiments that I know I want to use. And so I'm just working out here how I want to use these. There were some little, I guess they're like little starbursts, and so I'm gonna sort of use those as an accent around the floral element. And then there's also a little today stamp, I think, and the summer vibes stamp. And then I'm going to build my title here. And at this point, I'm still sort of thinking about what I want my title to be. I know that I'm simply sharing what I see here as I sit here eating dinner. And so the title is just going to be what I see. And I'm trying to figure out how I want to lay it, where I want to position it on the layout itself. And that sometimes that's a difficult thing to figure out, right? And I played with it a little bit, but I know I want to stack it like this. I've got 4 letters on top and 4 letters on the bottom. And then I have this little frame here from the die cut pack, and it sort of fits inside that frame. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to use that, but I set it aside here for just a minute just so I can sort of think about, I need to finalize where I want to put it. And then I had this little floral embellishment that can go in the corner, and that clicks for me. I think it probably needs to go here and then let that coral paper back the frame so that type pops out. I just am having a hard time getting my words out today. But that made it pop. And then somehow I decided to change it to the pink. I think I was worried that the coral was too dark. So changed it to the pink instead, and that's fine. It's a nice contrast between the frame and the background. And then the little yellow floral on the corner here. And then I decided to trim that in half and put it underneath the frame instead. Yeah, and that's frequently how I use my floral die cuts. I cut them in half and then tuck them under, and you get twice the dimension. And so now I'm going to put my alphabet down here into the little frame. Not very complicated, but pretty and fun. I love this alphabet. It's just a little white puffy alphabet with a grid. Very, very functional. And so once I have my title down, then I can sort of start to figure out how I'm going to do my journaling, and I also want to add some final embellishments to the layout. Obviously, some of the florals are really pretty in this kit. And there's a flare that has the floral on it as well. I'm just sort of going through, pulling things out that I see that will fit in or tuck behind this. Also, of course, I want to use some of the chipboard embellishments too. Those are fun. And they add a little bit of dimension. So yeah, I'm just going to place a few where I think I might like to put them. I know that I want my journaling to go somewhere on this lower right hand corner, and I need to add just a few more things to this little stripe element right here. I was getting ready to put that little date line down, and then I changed my mind. I'm going to stamp today on that little tiny label, and then stamp the date line above it, beside it. Yeah, I think I lost some video there. So I put the date line above the label, and then the summer vibes beside those, both of those elements, and then a little chipboard for dimension. So that's my grouping there. And then add a few more of those little tiny starbursts. Those are fun. And another little tag or label here that I'm going to put underneath the photo. And now for my journaling. And I know that I'm just going to write a little bit about what I'm seeing here, and seeing my favorite people. We're hanging out in my favorite spot, eating my favorite dinner, and just favorites here. This is another sort of photography prompt and journaling prompt that I'm using right now. So 2 really good photography and journaling prompts. The lens and what you see, just photograph and journal what you see in front of you, and photograph and journal your favorite things right now. Excellent journaling prompts that capture the fun things about your life right now. Then I'm also taking this dotted line and creating my own stamped line after the journaling itself was done. There. I want to add just a few more little things around the page, just some little embellishments. I need to adhere my flare down. I'm just using that red line tape for that. And so you notice in my layering, I'm starting with a photo or with my title, and then tucking some things under, and then putting something with dimension on top. So something with dimension might be a flare, or it might be a chipboard, or you could also add a die cut that's popped up with a pop dot. That's typically my formula for layering. And yay, I'm going to add a date here. I'm actually adding a date. I forget often and end up adding it later when I go to put it in the album, like, oh, I've totally forgot. So I actually put the date on there this time. And I'm just glancing around to see if it looks finished or not. I think that the strips of paper at the top of the layout still need a little bit of something, and these other strips on the left hand side also still need a little something, just a few more details to add. How do you know when it's done? I don't know. How do you know when you've put too much on there? I don't know. I tend to have a certain way that I like for my embellishment clusters to look. And like I said before, just a few things tucked underneath, a few things of dimension on top, maybe a stamp. I'm also sort of folding up and distressing these edges a little bit, just with my fingers. Not too tall, because you don't want to make your pages bulky. And then I also saw those little tiny stars that were in that die cut. They're so little and they're so cute. So I'm adding those around the layout. And then there's this one little spot here on this solid colored cardstock that looks empty to me. And I'm going to end up stamping. I did add this little flower, and then I'm going to end up stamping Unforgettable up there. And then that will complete this layout. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I'm going to go ahead and wrap everything up today. I hope that you've been inspired. I hope you've enjoyed seeing how I used my Felicity Jane summer kit. And I will see you back here again soon. Thanks again, you guys. Bye-bye.